Welcome to Kitchen Conversation with Lisa and Sterling, and today we're going to be looking at allergens. And this is in the light of the new research which was published in the British Medical Journal, which looks at incidence of anaphylaxis in hospitals over the last 20 years. And maybe it's no surprise that food-related anaphylaxis was actually the highest reported. The research concluded that hospital administrations for food-induced anaphylaxis had increased from 1998 to 2018. However, the good news is that the case fatality rate decreased. And in school children, what surprised me, Lisa, is that cow's milk is now the most common single cause of fatal anaphylaxis, which was a real surprise to me how things have changed in 20 years.
Exactly. And people are sort of concentrating so much still on nuts, but milk is really, really important, and it is found in so many foods unexpectedly.
And here we are talking about allergens, Lisa. And is it a year and a half ago that we met up in a cafe and had a chat about allergens and both got very frustrated what was being proposed?
That's right. And then the news came through that the consultation was finished, and the news came through that we were actually going to have the new law called Natasha's Law, which will actually come into force on the 1st of October this year. So although it was 18 months ago, or maybe longer, when we were talking about this, there's still a lot of discussion going on and lack of clarity about the most important thing of all, and that is what is a pre-packed food for direct sale, because there's no legal definition of this term.
I think, to me, what also concerns me, look, if this law reduces the number of deaths due to allergens, and then it's fantastic. But I've got a sneaking suspicion that there's some weaknesses in it that might unintentionally actually increase the risk. And I see that with in manufacturing, allergen management is a huge thing. And we have food technologists, we have specification writers, we have audits. But when you get into those small sandwich mum and pop type of shops, it's such a difficult thing to actually guarantee that what you're putting on the label is what's in the food itself, and you can mislabel, have worst case scenario, omit allergens that are in there and give people perhaps a full sense of security.
Yeah, I think there are all sorts of problems about labeling for small businesses, and one of the difficulties, and things are still coming out, that businesses are still thinking that they have to do one thing when in fact they have to do something much more complicated. So, for example, a lot of businesses are not aware of the fact that the list of ingredients has to be put in descending order of weight to comply. And really, that is not in the spirit of what this legislation is all about. What we really want is for the customers to know what allergens are in the food. It doesn't really matter in terms of descending order of weight. But somehow this legislation, this amendment, has got tangled up in the same labelling requirements that are necessary for manufactured foods. And by presenting that sort of difficulty, I think we could be losing the plot about what we really need to see on the label, which is what are the allergens.
It's the complexity is our enemy, isn't it? And simplicity, saying these allergens you'll find in this food, I think in big letters, not hidden amongst all the small ingredients typing that is getting smaller and smaller, and I can barely see with my eyes now. But we need to really shout out, don't we? And my other worry is perhaps people stop talking, because I always encourage people before this terrible instance, talk to the person that's selling you the food, start a conversation so they're aware who you are and that you're asking them the right questions. Because obviously, if it's all on the label, you're less inclined then to go speak to someone, because they're more than likely or not to say, well, it's on the label, read it yourself.
Well, I think the very thing that pushed this legislation forward, which was to prevent confusion about people thinking that a catering food was the same as manufacturing food, has somehow inadvertently been the consequence of the legislation itself. In other words, the label that is going to go onto these PPDS foods will actually look exactly like a manufactured label, but there won't be any of the dialogue between the customer and the business to ensure that that food has not actually experienced any cross-contamination in the making of it. And I think this is really, it's almost like an own goal. It's not actually going to make the food safer, in my opinion. I want people to talk to businesses. If they're making that food on site, then there's much more risk than if it's in a factory line. And that's why there needs to be the dialogue.
I'm hoping that, The FSA did consult widely, so they were up talking to people. They've gone through the recommendation, the fourth recommendation about everything being labelled. But I do hope that they will be supporting smaller businesses, especially, and kind of encouraging them to talk. So it's all. I think there should be a big campaign that goes along the side of this, which is, talk, and don't just rely on the label. Certainly, if I was an allergic person, I would not buy that type of food. Because I'd be sitting there thinking, look at the operation it's in. It might be one or two people's business. Do they have the knowledge to do it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Look at all the potential mistakes that could be made with the right label on the wrong product, or perhaps the wrong label on the right product, and that would concern me. I mean, that's why I like buying sandwiches sometimes from big retailers, because the type of big factories and all the checks they got in place, which obviously those type of approaches aren't available to a very small mom and pop operation.
Well, the thing is that some of these small operations might decide to buy a pre-packed food, so a pre-packed sandwich that they bring in and put those on the shelves. But the business, the customer won't know the difference. They won't know whether it's one of those, it's a pre-packed sandwich that's been made on the line, or whether it's been made in the business. And that's my biggest concern. Is this lack of understanding and the potential confusion that could ensue. Plus other things, how is a business actually going to get that label done? Very, very difficult. And if they print them in advance, are those labels going to get out of date very quickly? If they don't print them in advance and the labeling machine breaks, they would be breaking the law if they didn't put a label on. So that there are so many things, so many obstacles that are going to make it really, really difficult for compliance, and so many potential cock-ups, basically, which I'm really worried about.
Me too. I share your concern, and that's why I think I would encourage all food safety professionals, health professionals to make sure that communication, that dialogue is continuing between the food business operator and the consumer, and encouraging. And it's kids largely which are affected by this, isn't it? Because I think they're less confident, that they don't really want to talk to adults about things like that. And there's peer pressure. They don't want to stand out amongst their peers. Oh, I've got a problem and I need to talk to somebody about it. And I think we should be encouraging those people. I know the Anaphylaxis campaign does great work by trying to empower people to feel confident that they can, ask the right questions.
And I think more and more, I think we're going to find that small businesses are actually going to have to come out of scope, because they won't be able to produce the label that's needed in a consistent and safe way. And so what we need to do is we need clarity on what is in and out of scope, so that businesses can say, well, if I display my foods without any covering on, it's out of scope. These are pictures of how I can deal with this situation and be out of scope, because many businesses need a backup for the lunchtime rush. But on the other hand, they're not. If they put a wrapping on it now, it will be caught into the scope. We need to help them with solutions for how they can actually survive and still provide food, still have enough for the lunchtime rush, but not break the law and not put people at risk. So I think if people see open food, they'll know that they need to ask, and there's got to be a way for that to happen.
And guys, we're trying to play our part as Kitchen Conversations, so we'll be signposting a lot of good advice, signposting the regulations. You'll see a series of podcasts, not just between Lisa and myself. We'll be getting other experts involved. Hopefully there'll be enough information there for you to try to help manage your business, or if you're a regulator, some good advice that perhaps will help you to regulate that business. So thank you for joining us. So it's thank you from me.
And thank you from him.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Key points. Technical guidance has been produced to provide information about food allergen labelling. There is no legal definition of PPDS or pre-packed food for direct sale. However, in the guidance there is this information that food is pre-packed for direct sale if it is packed before being offered for sale to the consumer on the same premises, on the same site, or in other premises if the food is offered for sale from a movable or temporary premises. PPDS food does not cover food which does not have packaging or is packaged in such a way that the food can be altered without opening or changing the packaging. For example, a hot dog served on a cardboard tray. Another issue at the moment that is causing concern is what actually needs to be on the label. In the guidance, we're told that all PPDS food must have on the package or on the label attached to the package the name of the food and an ingredients list, including allergenic ingredients. The allergenic ingredients within the food must be emphasised every time they appear in the ingredients list. In the small print, we can see that we're referred to the Food Information Regulations for more rules on the required format of the ingredients list, but no information is given in the technical guide. So what else needs to be on this label? Well, it appears that the list of ingredients shall be headed by a suitable heading which consists of or includes the word ingredients. It shall also include all the ingredients of the food in descending order of weight, as recorded at the time of their use in the manufacture of the food. And it's interesting that the language says the manufacture of food, because of course in catering and hospitality, food isn't manufactured, it is made in a kitchen. We believe that the new regulation is unsafe because it decreases dialogue. Customers may just rely on the label and not ask about allergens. It gives a false sense of security. It means that customers may think that these foods are made with the same segregation and controls as manufactured foods. Mistakes could happen. They do in manufacturing. And we think that this could possibly lead to more incidents and even deaths. Here are some useful links, and please watch out for our next podcast.